I want you to just imagine a spectrum of human health for a second. So on one far end, you have the standard modern experience,
Right.
which is, chronic fatigue, relying on pharmaceuticals, brain fog, eating highly processed food.
Basically the default setting for millions of people today.
Exactly, the default. And then on the complete opposite end of that spectrum, you have our subject for today's deep dive.
Yeah, a man living entirely off-grid in this incredibly dense tropical jungle.
Right, surrounded by venomous spiders the size of dinner plates.
Yeah.
And he claims he hasn't been sick in decades. He believes his body is literally an antenna for divine consciousness, and he is out there deadlifting trees to prove it.
We're diving into the source material from the New Earth Fitness channel. And fair warning to you listening, this isn't about getting a beach body for the summer.
No, definitely not.
This is an exploration of a radical philosophy. It's an entire worldview that says if you want to be truly free, both physically and spiritually, you have to completely dismantle how you interact with the modern world.
And he refers to that modern world, quite provocatively, as Rome 2.0.
Rome 2.0, yes.
Which I love. I am fully ready to unpack this whole jungle philosopher vibe. But I feel like we really have to start with the obvious question here.
How does someone end up there?
Exactly. Because people don't just, wake up on a Tuesday and decide to move to a jungle filled with facehugger spiders, not unless they're running away from something.
Or, in his specific case, unless they feel they were literally being killed by the place they left behind.
Right.
Because to understand his whole framework, you really have to understand his pain. He was born with a severe condition called Hirschsprung's disease.
I've heard of that. It's a gut issue, right?
Yeah, it's a severe bowel disease. Basically, parts of his colon lacked the nerve cells needed to function. He physically couldn't eliminate waste.
Wow.
So from the exact moment he was born, his body was just retaining massive amounts of toxicity.
That is just a horrific start to life.
It really is. It meant he spent basically his entire childhood inside hospitals. He was pumped full of antibiotics, constantly going under the knife for surgeries just to stay alive.
Jeez.
He actually describes himself as the weakest kid you could possibly imagine. So his very first introduction to the World to Rome 2.0 was entirely through the medical system.
So he didn't view that medical intervention as salvation.
No, not at all. He views that experience as his first encounter with the Matrix.
Because he realized pretty early on that being dependent on that system just meant being perpetually sick.
Exactly. His perspective is that the system is perfectly designed to keep you just healthy enough to keep working, but sick enough that you remain entirely dependent on them.
Wow.
And there's this one specific event that really set his whole trajectory. At age 2, during one of those major surgeries, he claims he had a near-death experience.
Wait, at 2 years old?
Yeah.
That is incredibly young to retain any sort of memory like that.
It is, and he even admits in the videos that he didn't have the vocabulary to explain it at the time, but he vividly describes leaving his physical body and meeting Yeshua.
Jesus.
Right. And he says that during this encounter, he received what he calls downloads of information about human physiology and health.
Wow.
He believes that NDE planted a profound seed. So as he grew up, he would just get these sudden, intuitive flashes about how the human body actually works.
Even when it contradicted his doctors.
Exactly. It frequently contradicted what the medical experts were telling him to do.
So he views his knowledge of health not as something he studied in a biology textbook,
Yeah.
but as something he essentially remembered from that experience.
Precisely. And that framing is so important because it's why he calls his current life an exodus.
Right.
He actually spent 40 years grinding in the normal world, sacrificing, living way below his means, just so he could buy his absolute freedom.
Right, so his move to the jungle wasn't just some early retirement plan.
No, it was an active attempt to build a new Eden.
And now he's out there. He's running on a huge solar power setup, collecting his own rainwater, and hanging out with his dog, Milky.
Who is better known as Banana Bear.
Right, Banana Bear.
Yeah.
Because the dog can apparently smell a wild banana from a mile away,
Yeah.
which sounds completely idyllic until you hear him describe the actual environment. Because he talks about these trees that are covered in literal spikes that can snap off in your hand,
Duh.
and minor infections from a scratch that can take your limb off if you aren't paying attention.
But here's the fascinating psychological part of that. He actively prefers that danger.
Really?
Yeah, he says the jungle demands total mindfulness. If you aren't perfectly present in your body, you get seriously hurt. Whereas in the city, you can be a total zombie, just mentally checked out, scrolling on your phone all day, and you'll survive.
You survive, but you aren't alive.
Right. He thinks that zombie state is a fate far worse than death.
Danger forces presence. I mean, I can actually see the logic there.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's escaped Rome. Now I really want to get into the mechanics of his philosophy, because he has this core concept that the body is an antenna.
Yes. This is the absolute bedrock of his biological belief system. He argues that the human mind is not actually located inside the brain.
Okay.
Instead, he believes the physical body acts as a filter or an antenna for consciousness. And consciousness is just a field all around us.
So we're essentially like radios tuning into a broadcast signal.
That's exactly the metaphor. And the big problem, according to him, is that for most people walking around today, the radio is broken.
Because of the environment.
Right. It's severely clogged. It's bogged down with toxins, heavy metals, parasites, and what he just generally categorizes as filth.
Filth.
Yeah, and this blockage is what prevents the pure signal, which he calls the source, or God, from coming through clearly.
So if you asked him about someone dealing with, say, brain fog or chronic depression,
Mm.
he wouldn't look at that as a chemical imbalance in the brain.
Not at all. He'd say the antenna is dirty, period. He firmly believes that mental illness, lethargy, feeling spiritually disconnected, it all stems from having a plugged filter.
Which explains his absolute obsession with what he calls deep detox,
Yes.
because he gets incredibly specific about how to unclog that filter.
Mm-hmm.
In the source material, I notice he talks heavily about enemas,
He does. Specifically coffee enemas.
which I found highly ironic considering he explicitly states elsewhere that he does not drink coffee.
He won't touch it as a beverage. He actually calls caffeine a drug that pushes his nervous system past its safety bounds.
You said it makes him a lunatic, right?
Yeah, a lunatic.
Mm.
But he uses it therapeutically from the bottom up for liver detox. He views the coffee not as a stimulant in that context, but as a mechanical solvent.
Let's clean out the gut.
Yeah, he says it cleans out the, quote, cities of things you don't even want to know about that are living in the human intestinal tract.
Cities of things, that is just a deeply disturbing visual, but it leads right into his diet, because he used to be a hardcore raw meat guy.
He was. For about 5 years, he lived almost exclusively on raw meat, but he has completely pivoted. Currently, he is a strict vegetarian.
Which is a massive shift.
Yeah.
Because usually people in that ancestral health or off-grid space, they tend to go the exact opposite direction, from plant-based to carnivore. Why did he change?
It all comes back to that concept of the antenna and the frequency of the signal. He believes that eating dead animals is essentially eating death.
So it lowers the vibration.
Exactly. He argues that if you want to cultivate a high vibrational spiritual life, you have to consume living things, plants, and fruits that have actively captured sunlight.
Makes sense within his framework.
Plus, he calls the modern factory farming system a complete abomination and simply refuses to participate in that energy exchange.
So what exactly is on the menu in his New Eden?
It's super specific. He eats raw eggs, but strictly from his own ducks and chickens, which he treats basically like family pets.
Right.
And beyond that, it's massive amounts of fresh tropical fruit. We're talking soursop, huge papayas, bananas, and a lot of raw honey.
And he's really particular about when he eats all of this, too.
Yes. Food combining is a huge pillar for him.
Because of the digestion speeds.
Right. He points out that different foods digest at vastly different rates. If you mix a fast-digesting fruit with a really slow-digesting starch or protein, it causes a traffic jam in the gut.
Which leads to fermentation.
Exactly. The food basically rots in your stomach. That fermentation creates toxic gas and alcohol, which, you guessed it, clogs the antenna again.
You know, it's really interesting because normally when you hear about a spiritual guru living in a jungle, you expect a lot of vague, floaty metaphors.
Yeah.
But he is incredibly tactical. He's talking about specific digestion times, the mechanics of the lymph system, and step-by-step protocols.
That is exactly what makes his channel so unique. He constantly bridges that gap between the deeply mystical and the purely mechanical.
Yeah.
And I think a perfect example of that is his connective tissue repair stack.
Yes. I really wanted to bring this up. He released this whole breakdown on how to fix severe joint and tendon injuries, stuff that doctors normally say requires invasive surgery.
He did. You can think of it as his Wolverine
The
protocol.
Wolverine protocol.
Yeah, because he treats the human body like a master mechanic working on an engine. His working theory is that we get these chronic injuries because our tissues start acting like dried out old leather.
They lose their elasticity.
Right, they crack and tear under pressure because they are calcified and dehydrated at a cellular level.
So how does he propose you rehydrate the leather?
Magnesium.
Just magnesium.
Massive amounts of it. He believes almost everyone in modern society is severely depleted. So he uses this topical magnesium oil, which he actually makes himself from raw flakes.
Oh, wow.
And he essentially marinates his injuries in it to soften the calcified tissue.
And then he stacks that magnesium with Solomon seal, right?
He does.
Which I looked up. It's a root that's been used in traditional herbal medicine for centuries, specifically to tighten up loose tendons and ligaments.
Exactly. So look at the logic there. The magnesium oil softens the tight spasming muscle so it stops pulling on the joint.
And then the Solomon seal comes in and tightens the actual structural connection to the bone.
Right. Soften the muscle, tighten the connection.
It's highly logical. It
Okay.
really is.
And to top it off, he adds liposomal vitamin C, which acts as a generic electron donor, basically raw material for the body to build new collagen.
Right.
He claims this specific three-part combination can naturally heal herniated discs and severe tears that orthopedic surgeons say are permanent.
Okay, so that's how he fixes the machine.
Yeah.
Now we have to talk about how he actually uses the machine.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you see him on video, the guy is absolutely jacked. But he's obviously not commuting to the local Gold's Gym. He refers to his gym as the Avatar Tree.
This is honestly one of my favorite parts of his whole lore. He completely rejects the numbers culture of modern fitness.
The tracking in the app.
Yeah. He doesn't know his 1-rep max on the bench press because he is out there lifting literal logs, massive rocks, and trees.
He actually told this wild story in the source material about deadlifting a specific tree just to release emotional turmoil.
Yes, the Avatar Tree.
Yeah.
He says he was having this day where he was just overwhelmed with emotion, anger, deep sadness, a ton of empathy for the world.
Just heavy stuff.
Right. And instead of suppressing it or talking it out, he went out and channeled all of that raw emotional energy into lifting this one massive tree from the ground over and over again.
He calls it alchemizing the emotion.
Turning emotional lead into gold through extreme physical sweat.
That is intense. But it doesn't stop there, because then there's the pebble story.
Oh, the leg extensions.
Yes. And I have to be completely honest with you. When I was reviewing this part, this is where I genuinely started to get worried for his physical safety. Walk us through the 11,000 reps.
Yeah, this is where his mindset clearly shifts from what we would call fitness into something else entirely. He decided one day to do banded leg extensions, but instead of counting normal sets of 10 or 12, he set up a bucket. And every time he hit 100 reps, he threw a single pebble into the bucket.
And he didn't stop until he hit 11,000 reps
11,000.
in one single session.
In 2.5 hours of continuous movement.
Okay, speaking physiologically for a second, that sounds like a guaranteed recipe for rhabdomyolysis.
It does.
That is incredibly dangerous. When you do that, you are literally breaking down muscle tissue faster than your kidneys can possibly filter out the proteins. It can be fatal.
It is exceptionally dangerous. And the thing is, he practically admits that in the video.
He knows.
He knows, but you have to understand his internal logic. For him, this wasn't a workout to get bigger quads. It was an exorcism.
An exorcism.
Yes. He was trying to prove to himself that his spirit could command the flesh to just keep moving long after his basic biology was screaming at him to stop.
So it's mind over matter, but taken to this highly logical yet agonizing extreme.
Exactly. He just wanted to see unequivocally if he was the absolute master of his own physical house.
Which connects perfectly back to his whole spiritual framework. If the body is just a vehicle, an antenna, you occasionally have to show it who's actually driving.
Yeah.
But this leads us right into the wildest part of his philosophy. He wants to talk about the parasites.
Yes. The spiritual warfare chapter of the deep dive.
Right. Because I was tracking with him on the physical detox. I was even with him on lifting the trees. But then he takes this hard left turn into the metaphysical.
He does.
He starts talking about archons and these literal parasites living in the human mind. Is he speaking purely metaphorically here? Or does he genuinely believe there are invisible entities eating our thoughts?
Oh, he means it quite literally.
Okay.
Think of it like a computer virus.
Yeah.
If your laptop suddenly starts opening up browser windows that you didn't click on, you don't just sit there and say, oh, my computer's just having a bad emotional day.
Right. You say, I've been hacked. There is a malicious script running that I didn't write.
Precisely. And he thinks negative human thoughts, severe anxiety, sudden self-loathing, irrational fear are the malware.
Wow.
He holds this very controversial ancient Gnostic view that negative thoughts are not actually self-generated by your own brain.
They're injected.
Yes. He believes they're injected by these parasitic entities, archons, that feed on a substance called loosh.
Loosh. LOSH.
It's an esoteric term for raw emotional energy. His theory is that whenever you are in a heightened state of fear, anger, or lust, your energetic field is leaking.
Leaking energy.
Yes, and these entities purposefully provoke you to feel those negative things so they can essentially feed on the energetic runoff.
That is honestly terrifying.
It is.
But at the exact same time, it's also kind of incredibly liberating
Yeah.
because it completely separates the core you from your negative thoughts.
Yeah.
You aren't your anxiety. You're just infected by it.
That is exactly the psychological utility of the belief. It creates this hard boundary between the pure self and the mind. He views the mind as just a programmable interface that has been compromised by the matrix.
So the obvious question is, how do you run the antivirus? How do you patch a spiritual leak like that?
He offers what he literally calls the biggest spiritual hack in the universe.
Which is?
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Okay, we need to unpack that. Because usually when we hear about forgiveness, it's framed purely as a moral imperative. Like, just be a nice person and let it go.
Right, but he frames it entirely as physics.
The physics.
Yes. He says that if you hold on to a grudge or harbor deep resentment, you are actively maintaining an open connection, like a data stream to that darkness.
You're leaving the port open.
Exactly. You are feeding the parasite. By forgiving unconditionally, you instantly close the leak. You disconnect the cable.
So forgiveness isn't just about being good. It's basically tactical spiritual defense.
Tactical defense. It creates a hermetic seal around your energy. He says when you truly forgive, you are restored to a state of wholeness.
Which is fascinating.
And this actually leads right into his radical theory on human genetics. He believes that when you finally stop leaking this energy and you clean out the physical toxicity with the diet, you begin to activate your junk DNA.
Wait, the junk DNA. The stuff that mainstream geneticists say is just leftover evolutionary baggage that doesn't code for anything.
Exactly. He vehemently disagrees with them. He believes it's not junk at all, it's dormant potential.
Wow.
He claims that as you raise your consciousness and seal those leaks, this DNA physically activates, changing your actual bodily structure.
Like, morphologically.
Yes. He insists his own bone structure, the width of his jaw, his facial symmetry, has physically altered since he started living this way.
That is a massive claim.
It is. He even goes as far as saying he believes humans were originally designed to live for hundreds of years, and the only reason we die so young is because we are bogged down by toxicity and parasites.
It's definitely a lot to take in, but you can really see how perfectly it all fits together in his internal framework.
It's a closed loop.
Yeah. The deep detox cleans the physical hardware. The radical forgiveness cleans up the software. And the end result of all that is this fully activated, sovereign human being.
And a fully activated human being needs a proper place to live. Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. His concept of sovereignty.
Right. The new Eden.
Huh.
Because he's not just talking about eating better and doing yoga, he's talking about opting out of the modern economy completely.
He is incredibly transparent about his finances in the videos. He says that he and his entire family live on less than $500 a month.
$500 a month? For a family of 4?
Yeah.
That is, frankly, unheard of in the U.S. right now. I mean, you literally can't even rent a parking spot for that in some major cities.
It is wild, but you have to remember the setup. He has zero mortgage. He owns the land free and clear.
Right.
He has no monthly electricity bill because of the massive solar array. He catches and filters all his own water. He grows a huge portion of his own food.
The tropical fruit trees.
Exactly. He says he spent 40 years grinding in the system specifically to buy the land and build the infrastructure so that he would never need Caesar's coin ever again.
Caesar's coin. That perfectly captures it.
Yeah.
He really does view money as the literal chains of the empire.
He absolutely does. He sees forced financial dependency as the primary control mechanism of Rome 2.0. His logic is simple. If you need their money to eat, you are forced to follow their rules.
By needing almost nothing, he becomes completely ungovernable.
That's the goal. Ungovernable.
And he's raising his kids in this exact environment. He refers to their education as unschooling, right?
Yes, unschooling. He outright refuses to put his children in the modern school system, which he directly compares to obedience training for a prison camp.
Wow. So what do they do all day?
They explore the jungle. He wants them to develop their natural, uncorrupted genetic blueprints without the programming of a standard curriculum.
I'm guessing they're pretty capable kids.
He describes them as incredibly strong, highly agile, and fiercely free thinking, purely because they haven't been forced to sit motionless at a desk under fluorescent lights for 8 hours a day.
It sounds incredibly ideal in a primal way,
Yeah.
but I also noticed he is fiercely protective of it all. Like, he absolutely will not say where this jungle is located.
No, he keeps it totally secret. He mentions in one video that he has dedicated enemies.
Real enemies.
Yeah. He believes that successfully living this way puts a massive target on your back.
Because it threatens the system.
Exactly, because you are living proof that the Matrix isn't actually necessary for survival. He says he wants to be a light unto the world, but he is also acutely aware that bright lights attract bugs.
And sometimes predators.
Right. So he stays hidden.
It's a really fascinating duality. He desperately wants to share the message, hence running a public YouTube channel from off-grid, but he has to completely cloak the location to protect his new Eden.
And that tension is the core of his current life. He talks a lot about how human beings are all just neurons in the same giant universal network.
We're all connected.
Yeah. He feels a duty to send this high-frequency signal out from his hidden spot in the jungle, hoping to help the other dormant neurons wake up.
So let's bring this all home for the listener, because obviously most of the people listening to us right now are not going to pack up, move to an undisclosed jungle tomorrow, dodge giant venomous spiders, and start eating soursop.
No, and to be fair, he actually acknowledges that.
He does.
Yeah, his advice is often just, be a light where you currently are. You don't have to literally be in a jungle to apply the core principles of his philosophy.
Okay, so let's look at the final synthesis here. If we strip away the extreme elements, the 11,000 reps, the archon, what is the core actionable philosophy that anyone can take away from this?
I think it's an inverted hierarchy of needs. Step one is biological purity. You have to physically clean the filter first.
Right.
Because if your body is toxic, your mind will be anxious, and you simply won't be able to perceive truth. So you have to look ruthlessly at what you are putting in your mouth. Is it giving you life, or is it feeding death?
So step one, unclog the physical antenna.
Step two is mental hygiene. You have to recognize that sustained fear and anger are literal energy leaks.
Right. You don't even have to believe in literal invisible terrorcytes to realize that holding on to a bitter grudge is just draining your internal battery.
Exactly. So you use radical forgiveness to seal the vessel and protect your energy.
And step three.
Step three is sovereignty, actively reducing your dependency. You might not be able to get your living expenses down to $500 a month like he did,
Probably not.
but you can ask yourself, can I need less? Can I be just a little less dependent on the massive stressful systems that are making me sick in the first place?
It is incredibly compelling
Yeah.
because even if you are totally skeptical about the junk DNA activation or the Gnostic entities, the fundamental idea of reclaiming your own attention and your own biology from a system that literally profits off your chronic sickness, that hits really close to home.
It does. It forces you to ask, how much of our core personality or our perceived physical limitations are actually just static interference from the environment?
It's super easy to just write a guy like this off as the crazy jungle man on YouTube. But I think the core question he's posing makes people uncomfortable for a very good reason.
What question is that?
Basically, how much of you here is actually just the static? If you forcefully stripped away the daily caffeine, the processed sugar, the constant social media doom scrolling, the chronic stress from a job you hate, who would actually be left standing there?
According to him, a king or a queen would be left standing there.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to actually unplug from the warm comforts of Rome to find out.
It's a terrifying thought, honestly, but probably a necessary one. So here's our final thought for you to chew on today. If your body truly is just a physical filter for your consciousness, what vital signals are you currently blocking with your daily lifestyle choices?
What message is trying to get through right now that you just can't hear yet?
And what would happen if you finally cleared the line? Something to mull over. Thanks for going on this deep dive with us.
See you next time.